This is Inspiring Careers with your host, Ingrid Centurion. We're going to talk about fascinating technologies that will impact your future. Meet inspiring entrepreneurs and people that are making huge differences in the community and around the world. Dianne Bischoff James is a best-selling author, speaker, and life reboot coach who educates clients in the latest techniques for manifesting and transforming their hearts, minds, and bodies for optimal, authentic living. Having found herself completely off track, she lost 60 pounds, left a highly successful but exhaustive executive corporate career, rid herself of depression, conquered debilitating health problems, pursued her passion as an actress, navigated a healthy divorce, and survived the perils of an addictive relationship and co-created a new one, vital and real, all after 40. She's the author of The Real Brass Ring, which was featured in OM Times magazine and voted Aspire magazine top 10 inspirational book. Thanks for being on the show with us today.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you. So tell us a little bit about your background and what inspired you to write this book.
Well, it was actually a birthday present I gave myself on my 40th birthday. I went to see a woman named Sonia Choquette. She's an internationally known psychic, and I thought she was going to tell me I was on top of the world because I had my own business, I had 3 kids, I was running around, I was doing playground duty and managing clients and everything, and I had a big mini mansion across from the lake in Chicago. So I thought I was like spot on. And so I went to see her just to check in on my life, and she said, look, sister, I got to tell you, everything about your life is wrong. She's like, wrong guy, wrong career, wrong passion, wrong area of focus, wrong everything. And she said, if you don't hurry up and grab at the real brass ring, it's going to be too late for you. And I was floored, actually. She was right in many ways because I was 190 pounds, I was sucking down Prozac like there was no tomorrow, but I was going through the grind. I was doing the American dream because that's what I was told to do growing up. And so when she called me out on all my stuff, I say I was outed by a psychic. First of all, I wanted to strangle her because...
Hold on a second here. Were you one of those ladies that always go to psychics, or was this like your first psychic visit?
I'd been to a couple, but she was up and coming. She had written a couple books and she was on her way, and I knew that, and she was local. And someone had brought her name up like one day, and then someone brought it up the same week, and like 2 days later, and I thought, that's really weird, so I probably should go see her. So she basically crushed me that day, and she said, you better hurry up and change everything, or your life, you're gonna have to come back and do it all over again in worse and more difficult circumstances. And so I'm like, great, I've got a career, I've got kids, I've got all these activities, I got a mini mansion, I'm driving a Saab red convertible, I'm wearing the Hermes bags. I'm like, how do I get rid of everything and change everything, including my relationship, which I've been in for 16 years. And so I went home, basically cried for about 3 days straight, and I realized that she was right, because I was 190 pounds, I was so depressed I could barely get out of bed, and nothing about my life was resonating with me. So that's how the name came about, The Real Brass Ring, because I realized that I had to go for these changes, make it happen, and figure it out, because someone can tell you things are wrong. They can tell you, hey, your relationship's not supportive, it's not loving, you're in one that's just, more like a girlfriend than a loving relationship, and she was right, but how do you trash your life? So that became my mission.
So explain to us what the real brass ring concept is.
The concept
you
is
talk about in your book.
Yeah, there used to be a merry-go-round in California, and you would go around and around, and you try to grab at the brass ring. And if you grabbed the brass ring, you would win. Otherwise, they're steel rings. So when she said you had to grab at the real brass ring, for me, it was about going after every opportunity that comes your way, pursuing everything that resonates with passion, and you leave everything else behind. You go for the brass ring. So it's a lot like the Yes Man movie where you say yes to everything, but you leave no stones unturned. And so that's what I did. I lost 60 pounds. I started an acting career at 40 when I was grossly overweight. Did it anyway. Now I've done 50 movies and commercials. I decided to change the relationship. I say it was a healthy divorce. We got rid of the big house, scaled back, and I started to write this book about how to change your life, how to change it on all 4 levels, the mental, emotional, spiritual, and physical.
How long did it take you to finally finish your book? I just had a guest on and we talked about how to get that book started. Were you always a good writer?
I didn't really want to write the book, but she said, write it because people are going to benefit from your stories. So the book is very raw, very real. It's a lot like Eat, Pray, Love, but I didn't get to go to an ashram and just, trash everything and go on vacation for 2 years. I had to do it while raising kids, while taking care of myself, while keeping the family healthy and well, and transitioning out of a relationship that was going on for 16 years. So it wasn't easy. It took me, to be honest with you, it took me about 3 years to write the book.
Okay.
Because I was going through the changes. I became a single, at 40, and I would cruise downtown and have a great time in my little red convertible, and I didn't need anything from anyone anymore. I fixed the inside. I started acting. I loved it. The weight just fell off. And so I started finding all these different ways to live this real, authentic, happy, fulfilled life. And I figured no one else has put that out for us. No one else is helping women or men make these changes. So I came up with the 14 shortcuts for happy living.
And you have certain rules in your
Yes.
book.
Yeah.
Okay, we're not going to be able to cover all of them, but tell me about rule number 3.
Okay, rule number 3 is all about your alignment. There is a very easy way to find happiness and fulfillment if you look at 4 quadrants: mental, emotional, spiritual, and physical. And I developed an actual quiz in a way. And so I work with clients now all over the country, and we go through these 4 areas. And you need to answer honestly some questions. For example, do you love the work that you're doing? 1 to 10, 10 is the highest. And a lot of people will say 2, 4, hate it, 0. Some people will say 8. Very few people say 10. And then we go into a whole deal of questions on physical and how you're actually doing, and emotional. Really important questions. How supported do you feel by your significant other? 1 to 10, 10 is the highest, and people have to get very real about that. Some people don't feel supported at all in their most important relationship. And then the one that gets most people is self-love. How much do you truly love yourself? 1 to 10, 10 is the highest. And at this point, a lot of people, tears come up, or they'll say, I've always struggled with that, or there are things that I've never appreciated about myself and I really should. And that's where some of the deep work starts. And then on the spiritual, we're getting guided every day. I mean, you and I met, we were sitting at a table, and I just saw you and I liked you, and I'm like, that's it, this is a woman I want to know. But if I hadn't followed my guidance, I didn't want to go that day to the event. But I knew that there were people I had to meet. And so if you follow your guidance system spiritually and you line all of those up in a perfect world, and this is where I think we're going, everything will be 8 to 10 on all 4 quadrants for everybody. And then your life is like blissful because it's all balanced, it's all working. It's a little bit of the quantitative aspect, but it's also very much the qualitative aspect. How much are you loving all 4 aspects of your life? So that's rule number 3.
Okay, you have a lot of rules.
I have a lot of rules,
okay.
yeah.
We're not going to be able to hit all of them. So which one we think we should cover today? Rule 5 or rule 11?
I think we'll do 5.
Okay, let's go.
So we are beings of light, and light moves in waves, right? And so one of the really amazing ways to adjust yourself is if we think about ourselves as a wave, right? Which is what everybody talks about their vibration these days, right? How's things vibing for you? The wave goes up and down, right? So in a perfect world, it crosses this line, right? Up part, things are going pretty good. Down part, not so good. If it's really low, probably depression. If it's like this, you have anxiety. And so if you just observe how you feel in the moment and observe your own wave, you always have to reach for the upside of it. And a lot of that comes from very simple reframing. Even if something happens that isn't perfect, I had an audition recently, and it was a great audition. It was for SMILF, and it was going to be Rosie O'Donnell's sister. And they were saying, okay, well, pull out your Boston accent. And I don't have a Boston accent. I just don't, right? And so I'm trying to say it like a person from Chicago, mostly Midwest most of my life. And they're looking at me like, you can't do it. I'm like, it's okay, but that's all right. The upside of the wave is it was a great experience, great audition, bonded with everybody there, and now I have more exposure with the casting directors. So when something is right for me, it's gonna hit. And at the point, I was so exhausted and burned out at that moment in time, I'm not sure I could have done it anyway. But you always can find the upside. You show up, you suit up, you look your best, feel your best, and keep reaching for the upside of that wave. And so it's really easy to get your wave managed and to notice if it is too low, go for help, get some help. And also, there's really great herbs, and juicing will help bring my wave back up. Seriously, I'm into this thing now. It's, kale, spinach, watermelon, apple, fresh juice, no smoothies, just the juice. Feel like somebody shot joy into your arm. There's something, you just feel good about yourself. And joints stop hurting, and you get a little skip in your step. So there's billions of ways in which you can keep your wave really easy and managed.
Wow, so this sounds like a really wonderful book on how to really change your life. Thank you so much for being on the show. I know we can't cover everything, but we'll have you back so we can go over some other really important parts of your book that you shared in there that are so important for women. Today I have Josh Paulin with us. He's an immigration lawyer, and he practices right here in Framingham. He's going to share his story on what inspired him to specifically focus on immigration. Thanks for being on the show.
Thank you.
So I know being a lawyer requires a lot of education. Give us a little background of your education.
Sure. To go to law school, you have to have a 4-year degree, and my undergraduate degree is in literature. From there, I went on to law school at Washington University, which is a 3-year program. Most law programs are general programs. Very few people know what they want to do when they go to law school, but you get a general education that prepares you for the practice of law, with a couple of exceptions. Immigration is not one of them.
Exactly. And I asked you, what was it that made you want to focus on immigration? And you have a great story when you were very young that you still remember to this day. Can you share that story with us?
Sure. It's a funny thing, because in my work, I don't see many people who know much about immigration until they start going out with a foreign person or run into somebody who needs some help. Most of us from this country aren't really aware of the immigration system in our personal lives. But what happened to me was I was working on the Law Merit Badge as a Boy Scout. As a teenager, one of the requirements was to go to court and watch a hearing or a trial or something. And my sister at the time was working in the Boston Immigration Court. So I said, can I go to a trial and watch? So she talked to one of the judges, Judge Bagley, who I think at the time was living in Sudbury, said, yeah, you can sit in my courtroom. And I got to watch an asylum hearing for a Pakistani man back in the mid-'80s, and it was a real eye-opener. It was a great experience.
But why do you remember it till this day? What was it about the gentleman? You were telling me how he was pleading.
He was seeking asylum in the U.S., yes. He was somebody who feared that his life would be in danger, that he'd be killed if he went back to Pakistan. And he was able to show a judge that. And it was a really impressive thing for a young person to see, that this is a life and death thing. Not all immigration cases are, but that was wow. Absolutely amazing.
And that you remember that. And we go through a lot of things when we're teenagers. Some of us don't remember anything, but I just thought that was really important for you to share that with us today.
Well, I don't forget it, because again, I go to that court today. I'm in the same courtroom that I was as a boy. And recently I had a case where I was defending a Pakistani man on an asylum case. And it was a really neat memory to tie together something that happened 30 years ago with something that's happening today. So it's hard to forget something like that.
And what made you, or not what made you, what specifically is your specialty when it comes to immigration? We talked about this. There's certain things that you work on, and now you're the expert. Share with us exactly what your specialty is.
Well, the areas I focus on are areas like family immigration, keeping families together, helping families get together in the cases of marriage, or bringing family members here. Also, I do a good bit of work with artists, musicians, and things like that who are looking for visas to come to the U.S. for a period of time or to stay here. And I also do a bit of work with the immigration courts as well. Some other things, but those are probably the main areas. That's not an issue. Illegality generally refers to people who enter the U.S. without passing through a border station, or without passing through immigration, or people who have a visa and don't renew it, they overstay.
That's what I meant.
Yes. Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, so they have a visa and they come for work, right?
Sure.
Or they have a visa and they come for education, and it's only for a certain period of time.
That's right.
Okay, so when that time is expired, many of them stay here.
Many do, yes.
Right, so those are illegals.
They would be illegal, yes.
Right, and so what I'm saying is now they're coming to you and saying, hey, I better take care of this situation so I don't get deported back. Can you talk a little bit about that? Establishing, I believe you told me, permanent residency.
To the extent they can. There are really few options for people in that situation. Because to change your status in the US, you generally have to be in status. To extend your status, you have to be in status. Once you're out of status, you have to leave the country. And if you leave the country when you've been out of status for too long of a period of time, you can't come back for a long penalty period. So it's really difficult for people. Probably the only exception is for people who marry a US citizen or are related to a US citizen, the right degree of family relationship.
Now let's talk about that. If you marry a US citizen, there's still some things that you have to abide by, some rules.
True.
You were telling me.
You
Explain
have to
those.
Sure, you have to show that the marriage is a valid marriage. It's entered into for valid purposes, not to evade immigration laws. You're not helping out a friend. You're not trying to get a green card, by misrepresenting or lying to immigration. But immigration will call the person in for an interview, and the couple will have to, not just the immigrant, but the person they're married to, will have to show immigration that it's a real marriage. They'll have to provide evidence of that, and they'll have to go through an interview where they'll be separated and have to answer questions. And if they pass that process successfully, the immigrant will get a green card. They'll be permanent residents of the United States.
Okay. And once they get that green card, it's good. It's like happy sailings.
It is and it isn't. They still have to obey the laws, because things that would be fine for a U.S. citizen if you went to court and you got involved in some criminal activity. The U.S. citizen, the worst thing that you can do is go to jail, right? But for somebody who's not here legally, they could go to jail and then be deported from the U.S. So they have to maintain their respect for the laws. But also, you have to stay in the U.S. for a sufficient period of time. You can't leave the U.S. for 3 years on a green card and come back and expect that you're not going to have a problem when you come in.
You told me about immigration court work. Most of your focus is in immigration court work. Can you explain what that means?
A bit of immigration court. Generally, yes. Some people who are, if Immigration and Customs Enforcement, that's the agency of Department of Homeland Security that works with, the immigration court. If people are here, they've overstayed visas or they've entered unlawfully and they've been put into immigration court proceedings, they'll go before an immigration judge and show why they shouldn't have to. What are their rights? Have they shown that they need to? Do they have a way to stay in the United States? Do they have a defense against deportation? Because once you're in an immigration court proceeding, the goal is to deport the person, to remove the person from the United States. And they'll have to show that they have some sort of defense. Do you have a family member? Do you have a fear of persecution in your home country? Do you have something, can you show that you have U.S. citizen relatives who will suffer if you're removed from the U.S.? So that's your opportunity to prove your case before an immigration judge.
Can you share with us some cases that you worked on that
Sure.
the average person would have no clue about?
Sure. Every day in the immigration court, there are a lot of people going through, hundreds of people all through the U.S. in immigration courts all across the country, answering questions, or they're having hearings where they're seeking bond. They might be picked up by immigration and detained. So a lot of people will be going for bond. Other cases are people who are seeking asylum, people who have a fear that they'll be persecuted or killed if they return to their home countries. So those people would be seeking asylum in the immigration court. There are people who are looking for green cards based on marriage that somehow wound up in the immigration court. So there are all sorts of ways that people wind up in the system, and these cases go on, as I said, every day.
Now, to come to America legally, so many, millions, hundreds of thousands come to America legally. And many of them also, once they're here, they want to bring their brothers or their sisters.
Yes.
Those are also the cases that you focus on.
That's right.
Can you explain to us what you do there, bringing
Sure.
families together, and
Sure.
a case of what that means?
In some cases, your family members here in the U.S. You meet somebody who's a student, you meet somebody who's on a tourist visa, and the relationship happens, and you say, geez, we want to get married. Those are sort of the easy cases because you apply for the green card for your spouse or or that person, and you're together during that period. But the cases you're mentioning, if I'm a U.S. citizen and I apply for my brother who's in a foreign country, there may be a 12-year wait. Those are kind of the longest ones, but
Right.
there are shorter waits for other people. But even if I'm applying for my parents or for my spouse as a U.S. citizen, it could take a year or more to get them to go through the process, and there's a separation for that period of time.
And that's your specialty. You know about that. I wanted to share that because there's people out there, you know, this is the first time I'm ever meeting an immigration lawyer, and there's so many difficult things that you don't know about when it comes to immigration. And I wanted to make sure if someone needs your assistant,
until
they
you
can
run
watch
into
this.
it. Right. Until you run into it, yeah, and then you get an earful from an immigration lawyer like me.
Now you're also the expert in DACA.
I do a bit of DACA. Again, we try not to use words like expertise.
Oh, I like to say expert.
Yeah, sure. But I do handle a bit of it, and it was a great humanitarian program that opened up for young people who'd come to the U.S. as children, and graduated from high school and found out, geez, I can't get a job. Or some people may have come from a country where English isn't spoken, and they may not have been brought up to learn the language in their home country. What do you do with those kids? So it was a really great humanitarian solution to a major problem that we had. And those folks can get kind of work authorizations for 2-year periods, and that continues to this day. It started back in 2012.
Okay, so you're working on those. The other thing is waivers for grounds of.
Sure, for inadmissibility.
Yes.
I think the classic one I'm seeing right now is, say I marry a foreign person who entered illegally, and that person can't change their status because they weren't admitted into the U.S. properly. So they have to leave the U.S. and have an interview back home. If they've been here for more than a year, the day they leave the country, they're going to have a 10-year bar to re-entry. They can't come back here for 10 years unless they get a waiver. So that's some of the work I do, to show hardship to the U.S. citizen relative, to show, and there are cases where the hardship is extreme, it's severe. In the old days, during the prior presidency, somebody looked at the system and said, if it would be an extreme hardship for you to be separated from your spouse, why are we going to make you wait a year? And they got together and they said, we're going to figure out a way to make a waiver so that the separation is for a short period of time. They did it. It was amazing. It helped a lot of people. So that's a lot of what I'm seeing now.
Okay. And also business immigration. Share with us how people get to come here specifically for working.
Sure. In a lot of cases, you're looking for expertise that might not be available in the U.S., especially in hot new fields, some of the tech fields. All the people who have degrees or expertise in that area are already working. You're trying to start a new business, you can't find somebody, or your business is expanding. You can't expand at the level you'd like to do that. There are visas available to people with special skills, with management skills, technical skills, and those are generally 3-year visas. So it's definitely a possibility for people. And
are you seeing a lot of that? Are a lot of businesses coming to you for this?
I don't do so much business, but I was talking to somebody today. We were talking about the number of visas available in one of the categories. There are 65,000 every year. So you put in your application. In 1 week this year, immigration received 190,000 applications for that category of visa. Wow. So 2/3 of the people that were going to come here, work, help add value to the businesses, they're not just taking money, they're adding value. You wouldn't hire somebody unless you're going to get a better return out of it. And I think people don't really understand that about immigration. 2/3 of the people didn't get visas, didn't get to come here, didn't get to help strengthen our economy, didn't increase the value of the businesses that were doing great things in the tech sphere.
I also know that to become an American citizen, the process is taking very long, up to 8 to 10 years to actually become an American citizen. Why is the process so slow?
It wouldn't necessarily be that long. I mean, probably the quickest you might see it would be, say, 3 to 4 years.
Okay.
Somebody comes to the U.S. on a green card, is marrying a U.S. citizen, gets that green card. In 3 years, they can apply for citizenship. It should take, 6 to 8 months normally for them to get the citizenship, but there are delays. A lot of the cases are running slow. Some places are saying we're running between 8 months and 24 months, for citizenship or for green card. So things really are slow, but not as bad as that.
Oh, okay. All right. Sure. Now, Josh, you also speak Spanish and Portuguese.
I do.
Where did you learn these languages?
Spanish that's a funny question. Spanish I learned in high school, then I studied in Spain for a year, and then I forgot everything I learned, and then I married a Panamanian. So my wife and I do speak Spanish. I speak Spanish with her family, and I do have a lot of clients who speak Spanish, so that polished up the ability there.
I also wanted to cover specific areas that you don't do. Like you told me, you don't do L1 visas.
Right. I did an L1 once. Some of the visas they're just paper heavy. I mean, all immigration is paper heavy, but for some reason I think we had cases of documentation for this particular case, and it was just such a disagreeable experience that I pulled myself back from it. There are certain areas too, like some things aren't really handled by immigration lawyers outside of extraordinary circumstances. So student visas are generally done in-house in colleges. Colleges will have, Framingham State across the street probably has a foreign student officer who works with foreign nationals and helps them to navigate their way through the visa system, which they can do in most cases. It's probably a lawyer will help out with denials and problems like that.
Tell us, where are you located in Framingham?
On Speen Street, so
Okay.
up close to Natick.
And how can they reach you?
By phone at 617-482-4669, and I'm on paulinlaw.com.
Okay. Para la gente que habla en español,
Sí.
¿cómo pueden llamarte?
Pueden llamarme en 617-482-4669.
Muy bien.
Sí.
Josh, tell me about artist visas and what does that entail?
So there are a lot of folks from foreign countries who have artistic skills. We talk a lot about the business skills people bring to America, but a lot of the entertainers you enjoy are probably Canadian, from television or music, and several other countries as well. People who really have a unique cultural overview to bring to the U.S. and insights, and those folks have access to artist visas as well. Generally 3-year visas for musicians, entertainers, painters, you name it. People who have extraordinary ability in the arts can seek visas to the U.S. And the best can seek green cards through their abilities.
When I watch Americans Got Talent, you see so much great talent from all around the world. And what a better place than to come to America.
Sure, it's a real, to use an overused expression, it's a real melting pot.
Right.
If you look at Berklee College of Music in Boston, a lot of the students who come there are from, probably half of them are from foreign countries. And they come together and they just make really amazing things. Really amazing music comes out of that pot, as it were.
Well, thank you so much for doing what you're doing. Keep doing your great service to everyone out there in the community. And thanks for being on the show today.
Pleasure, Ingrid. Thank you.
Thank you.